G'day Rugby League Tragics, it's the Rugby League Guy here for the Round 1 wrap-up, Round 1 of 2022, which got underway on Thursday night. But before I kick it off, I must say that it would be remiss of me not to wear this shirt today, given the Bulldogs had a little victory last night. I'm not getting carried away, but I'm going to be honest, they're very few and far between. I don't get to celebrate often, so as little a victory as it is, and as much as I'm not getting carried away, I'm wearing it today. All right, so round 1, as I said, kicked off Thursday night out at Penrith between the Panthers and the Seagulls, and the Panthers just kicked off 2022, where they left off season 2021 as premiers. Even though they've lost a couple of big names from their squad, they were brilliant. At times, it was just like watching 17 mates having a game of Oztag or touch footy down the park. They were just scintillating, I thought. They're going to be very, very tough to beat this year, the Panthers. Ivan Cleary, obviously, there's a bit of structure there, but he's just letting them play their own natural game. And as we know, some of these guys, I think there's 7 or 8 of them have played junior footy, flag, etc. together for quite some time, and it shows. Manly, I thought, look, to be honest, they looked a little bit old. I think Daly Cherry-Evans, Kieran Foran, they just looked like they were playing on old legs. They are getting older. I'm 50, so I'm not criticising anyone. But ultimately, I think Manly, even the likes of Marty Tapau, he's getting up there in age as well. So I think that showed there was a clear difference between the youth of the Panthers and what you might say that experience with Manly. So they've got the experience there, the Seagulls, but I just don't know that they've got the legs to maintain their capabilities against those younger teams. So it'll be interesting. But 28-6 it was, Penrith over Manly. Then we went on to Friday night. Raiders got the Sharks 24-19 down there in Canberra. Ricky would have been having babies again. It looked like it was going to go the way that many of their games went last year, where they got a good lead, blew it in the second half. Inexplicable. Nobody knew what had happened. They just died in the backside. But they held out against the Sharks. The Sharks did well to come back, but the Raiders did well to hold on. And I think, considering Fogarty's out and Schneider, new halfback, all that sort of stuff, I thought they did really well. And in the end, Ricky was very happy, as you can imagine. Broncos 11, Rabbitohs 4. Now, South Sydney, I think, were as shell-shocked as the rest of us when they saw the Broncos come out with that youth and enthusiasm. They were without Adam Reynolds, as we know. He was out because of COVID, so they were already behind the 8 ball. But their halves, Kelly and Walters, I thought did a fantastic job. And young Cobbo, what's he going to be? This kid just could be anything. Talk that down the track he might end up as a fullback, and that's probably the case. But I think, as most of the experts have agreed, probably better just to stay on that wing for a little bit, get to know the game, and he could be anything. But the Broncos, look, it was something I spoke about in the season preview, that they perhaps didn't have that determination, that sort of gumption that you need to tough it out, because there was talk that some of the players were complaining the pre-season training was too hard. Well, they showed everything that they needed to show the other night, and it was a little bit Brisbane-esque, if you like. There was a little bit of a return to how we might once have remembered the Broncos. So well done to the Broncos. They're up there after round 1, and a good win over South Sydney. The Roosters, another team, we weren't expecting that. I don't think they were expecting it, and I don't think any of us were expecting it. I don't know if it was an ambush. I think the Knights just came out and they played really simple footy. I think the Knights just played very simple footy, and it's cliched, but they did all the little things right and got the result. Great to see footy back at the SCG as well. Well done to the Knights. I had something in the back of my mind that says this year they're going to maybe just produce something a little bit above and beyond what most people think. And if they're any indication from the weekend, particularly with Dane Gagai back in the club, I think they may surprise a few people. The Warriors and the Dragons, well, that was up on the Sunshine Coast. Of course, the Warriors aren't playing in New Zealand because of COVID. I tipped the Dragons, and I thought that it was going to be one of those games where they were going to let it slip. The Warriors did get in front there at one stage by a couple of points, but the Dragons, again, did well to hold on, and I think Anthony Griffin is certainly going to take the Dragons just, again, a bit like the Knights for me, just that little bit further than most of us might have thought at the beginning of the season. The Tigers, the poor old bloody Tigers, what can I say? They dominated Melbourne Storm. Look, there was a point there where you did start to think, are they going to do what the Tigers normally do and collapse? I guess the short answer is yes, they did, but it wasn't a massive fold of the cards. They did play well, but look, at the end of the day, the second half was pretty ordinary. They made a lot of mistakes, and you can say that they probably lost the game rather than the Storm won the game, if that makes sense. They made it easy for the Storm. Luke Brooks, he missed, the first 4 attempts at goal, and I think that cruelled them as well. And to be quite honest, after 3, I'd have been chucking the ball to someone else. It's not an easy gig. But, he's been around long enough, he's been doing this long enough that he should be, kicking better averages than none from your first 4 attempts. I think that hurt the Tigers in the long run, psychologically as much as anything else, and they need to sort that out quick smart. So Brooksy needs to be probably hanging back at Concord long after the session's finished and just putting as many over as he can to build his confidence up, because I'm assuming that it wouldn't have done his confidence much good at all. I liked Jackson Hastings at 5'8". I thought he controlled them really well. There is hope for the West Tigers. I know I've had them down as wooden spooners for the start last week. I said I thought that's where they'd finish. I'm not getting carried away, but look, there are some good signs there for them. And for all my West Tigers mates back down in Seatown, don't despair. I think they'll get across the line in some of those tighter games against teams that maybe aren't quite the quality of the Storm, so don't despair. The Eels and the Titans, this was, mate, it was Middle Earth stuff. They're up. The Eels are sort of running away a little bit, then the Titans are catching up. I mean, they were a couple of tries behind just before half-time. They come out in the second half, the Titans. They score the only try the second half after there were 5 tries each in that first half. And then the Eels win the game based on the back of 3 penalty goals in the second half. It was weird. It was a really weird game of footy, but it was a quality game of footy to watch. I really enjoyed it. I took the Eels, but a little bit of a quasi Titans fan living up here on the Gold Coast, so I sort of like to see them do well. And again, for Titans fans, like the Tigers, there's hope. There really is. I think they'll probably be thereabouts in that around that top 8, as I said last week in my preview. Now, Coach Holbrook has come out, Justin Holbrook, and is a little bit dubious about some of the 50-50 the captain's challenges. I agree. I think there was some rubbish calls over the weekend, not just in that game, but just in general. Some of the refereeing is really substandard. I'm putting it out there again. Not an easy job, but you know what? With all the technology we've got, with bunkers and all the rest of it, mate, there's some really horrible decisions over the weekend, and they need to sort them out quick smart, because they're going to ruin the game. And Holbrook, in my opinion, had every reason. He was justified in saying what he said, because some of those 50-50 decisions, they were just terrible. But anyway, I'm sure they'll move on. And last but not least, my beloved doggies. Look, I tipped against them. It's the first year in tipping where I've made the decision to be fair dinkum, and I will tip with my head and not my heart. And it was one of those weeks where you lost the tip, but you got the win, and so ultimately everybody's happy. Look, a nice win. It was gutsy. They had 4 or 5 HIAs. Blokes couldn't come back. They ended up having to use the 18th man. Gutsy effort. Conditions were hot, steamy, then it was torrential rain, and you know what? The Bulldogs, they gritted gritted, if that's a word. They gritted it out. And you know, if that had been any game last year in a similar situation, they probably would have lost because they just wouldn't have had the ability to hang in there. But, you know, just watching Addo Carr and his influence and yelling and talking and hearing his voice above everybody's was fantastic. It's something that I can't say I've heard for a few years at the Bulldogs. I mean, Josh Jackson, you know, he's a great leader in terms of leading by example, but I don't hear a lot from him in terms of these ones, and you need that out there, and the Fox brings it. So let's trot. But again, not getting carried away. The Dogs have got a lot of work to do still. I still say Averillo's not a halfback. I think Jeremy Marshall-King's quite slow with his service out of dummy half. And Ockenbaugh, look, I just don't know how he can maintain a position in first grade for too much longer. Didn't have a bad game yesterday, and he scored a try, and people are going to hang their hat on that, but he still runs in off his wing, and better teams would have capitalised on that yesterday. You got to get your positioning right. I'm no expert, and with a head like this, clearly I didn't spend too much time on the wing, but there are still some things that need to be sorted out there at the Bulldogs, as I say. Long season ahead, and I don't want to take anything away from that fantastic win, which it was, but there's still some work to do. So let's have a look at the ladder. So out in front, Penrith, the Knights second, the Dragons are third, Melbourne Storm fourth, the Broncos are fifth, the Raiders sixth, the Eels are seventh, the Bulldogs are the eighth, and they round off the eight for after round one. Then it's the Cowboys, Titans, Sharks, Rabbitohs, Tigers, Warriors, Roosters and Sea Eagles. Now, if you turn that on its head at the moment, Manly, Roosters would be first, and you'd think that would be fairly standard after even round one. However, they're both last and second last respectively. Will they be there in a month, let alone in 25 weeks' time? Not a hope. But I've got to say, for a Bulldog supporter, it's nice to see those guys down there just for a little time. Now, we obviously will look at the tips for round two later in the week. I'll do a quick round two preview. But in the meantime, look, if you follow a team that was expected to win and they didn't, there's hope. Obviously, there's a pretty good chance you'll be up there next week, the Roosters, the Sea Eagles, the Rabbitohs, those sorts of teams. If you follow a team that struggles week in, week out, i.e. the Bulldogs, the Tigers, those sorts of teams, have faith if you didn't get the points this week. Enjoy it if you did get the points this week. But most importantly, let's keep loving rugby league. Talk to you again soon. The Rugby League Guy, signing off.